Chapter 41, Joe Rouge, who was subdued by the sweet and sour ribs. How audacious! Joe Rouge's pupils constricted as his palm landed on the table and he angrily shouted. The table suddenly trembled, startling everyone present. Still, they all felt that this mysterious man was too arrogant. Who was the minister of the left? As an important official within the imperial city, his status was comparable to General Zhou Meng. However, this man's tone was filled with contempt toward the minister of the left. It was uncertain whether he was really that confident or was deliberately arrogant. Joe Rouge's eyes brightly lit up as his aura rapidly increased. The stream of energy was like bugs crawling on his skin as he swiftly gathered true energy. You're noisy. Since you're here in Owner Boo's place, then you should be peacefully eating. If you want to fight, then get out of here, the mysterious man indifferently said. He did not care about Joe Rouge, who was gathering his aura in the slightest. As the man finished speaking, he held out his hand with his thumb and index finger together, as if he was going to flick away a fly. Buzz. The three barbarians of Ouyang who were sitting at a distance immediately moved in front of Ouyang Zioyi. Their hairs were standing on ends as they gravely looked toward the mysterious man. Zhou Yanniu's pupils constricted as well, and she subconsciously gathered the true energy within her body. Chi. With a flick of the man's finger, a stream of invisible energy swiftly burst out. Joe Rouge's body froze for a moment, then the aura that surrounded him started shriveling like a deflated balloon. With a groan, he fell face forward to the ground. Joe Rouge went into a daze as his entire body shivered and his lips trembled. It was too terrifying. Within that instant, Joe Rouge thought he was going to die. A red dot instantly appeared in the center of his forehead, then rapidly grew to cover his entire forehead. If we were not in Owner Boo's store right now, you would have already become a corpse by now, the mysterious man indifferently said as he slowly retracted his arm and became silent. The mood within the store instantly became cold and everyone held their breath. Joe Rouge had an unsightly expression on his face as he climbed up from the ground, then miserably returned to his seat and quietly sat down. The three barbarians of Ouyang were pulling Ouyang Zioyi away to a safe distance as well. From the scryness of the mysterious man's attack, they could tell that he was at least a 5th grade battle king. However, that was still a conservative estimate. After all, Joe Rouge was a 3rd grade battle maniac that was close to becoming a 4th grade battle spirit. Even an ordinary battle king would have some difficulty in instantly killing him. Which meant that this man might be a 6th grade battle emperor. As the awkward mood within the store seemed to stretch on forever, a rich fragrance drifted out from the kitchen. The improved egg fried rice is ready, Bu Feng's indifferent voice sounded out from within the kitchen. A bowl of egg fried rice that appeared to be radiating a golden brilliance was placed at the window. Ouyang Zioyi eagerly walked over to collect the food. The rich fragrance filled with warmth seemed to disperse much of the cold atmosphere within the store. The delicious smell, that was like a piece of silk gliding across their faces, made them feel as if their hearts were being teased. It smells good. As Joe Rouge sniffed the fragrance, he felt as if the swelling pain on his forehead had mostly receded. Zhou Zilong cheerfully received the egg fried rice while holding a blue and white porcelain spoon in his hand and began to gobble down the food. Joe Rouge swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had never tasted the egg fried rice before, but his stomach was rumbling just from smelling the fragrance. Zhou Zilong was eating so messily that there was even rice grains at the corners of his mouth. When he felt a gaze filled with burning desire, he immediately grinned at Joe Rouge and asked, "Do you want to give it a try?" Joe Rouge looked at him and subtly nodded. "If you want to try it, then buy it yourself next time." Zhou Zilong stuck his tongue out, licked the rice grains off the corner of his mouth and teasingly said. Joe Rouge immediately froze and his eyes were filled with anger as he thought, "How dare he make fun of me? The golden shumei is ready." Bu Feng's indifferent voice sounded out once more. Subsequently, the golden shumei was collected by Ouyang Zioyi and placed in front of Zhou Yanniu. The exceptionally beautiful golden shume was as delicate as a piece of artwork and so bright that it was practically radiating golden rays. As Zhou Yanyu picked up a shume with a pair of bamboo chopsticks, the soup seeped out and instantly released a captivating fragrance. Before the soup dribbled off the shume, Zhou Yanyu caught it with her mouth. Her delicate lips became even more enticing as a layer of glistening oil covered her lips. Zhou Ruji's eyes were almost completely mystified at this point. No one could be sure whether he was looking at the delicious food or the beautiful woman, but it was clear that the scene before him was a feast for the eyes. After that, the time between each dish getting served became even shorter. The Li's fish was ready to be served as well. As the dish was too heavy for Zhou, Bu Feng had to personally serve it. When he entered the dining area, he was slightly startled to see the mysterious man wearing the bamboo hat. The mysterious man nodded at Bu Feng and he expressionlessly nodded in response as well. As the Li's fish appeared, the rich wine aroma almost overpowered the fragrance of all the other dishes. Even the eyes of the mysterious man slightly lit up and gave the Li's fish a longer look. From the looks of it, it seems pretty good, the man thought to himself. I didn't realize that other than having wine of the highest grade, Owner Bu's dishes were first grade as well. Sweet and sour ribs is ready. A short while after returning to the kitchen, Bu Feng's voice sounded out from it. Ouyang Zhou was already impatiently waiting at the window. She was looking forward to Bu Feng's latest dish. When the tangerine and fragrant sweet and sour ribs appeared in front of Ouyang Zhou, she was completely stunned. Just from sniffing the smell, she was involuntarily gulping and almost started drooling. It was too aromatic. Furthermore, the sweet and sour fragrance was teasing the little Lili to the point of losing her self-control. Unfortunately, the one who ordered the dish was that sissy, Zhou Ruj. As she unwillingly served the dish to Zhou Ruj, the latter was already drooling while holding a pair of bamboo chopsticks in his hand. The fragrance of the sweet and sour ribs was so aromatic that he was almost captivated to the point of being inextricable. As he picked up a piece of rib with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth, a sweet and sour flavor instantly burst out. The rich flavor of the meat violently surged and enveloped his taste buds while assaulting his mouth. The rib was still slightly hot and he could not help but pant to cool it down. The rich fragrance of the meat immediately enveloped the entire store. Even Zhou Zilong stopped eating and Zhou Yanyu looked toward Zhou Ruj as well. It was truly too fragrant. Zhou Ruj was so happy that he almost shed tears. It was really extremely delicious. He felt that the 50 crystals were really well spent. He rapidly picked up another piece and shoved it into his mouth as Ouyang Zhou enviously watched. The sweet and sour sauce splattered and stained the corners of his mouth. He was panting as he ate the meat. At that moment, Bu Feng walked out of the kitchen. All of the dishes were cooked and only the ice heart jade urn wine was left. He carried out 2 jars of ice heart jade urn wine and separately placed them in front of Zhou Zilong and the 3 barbarians of Ouyang. Then he returned to the kitchen, took out another jar and placed it on the table of the mysterious man. Here's your ice heart jade urn wine, please enjoy your drink, Bu Feng expressionlessly said. Ha! Owner. Is your wine really better than the bejeweled nectar wine? Zhou Ruj asked doubtfully while panting. He was still chewing a piece of rib that was emitting heat in his mouth. I already said that whatever bejeweled nectar wine is nothing. You just have to taste my wine and you'll know, Bu Feng simply said. The mysterious man's hoarse voice sounded out as well. How is bejeweled nectar wine even comparable to Owner Bu's ice hard jade urn wine? The number 1 wine in Light Wind Empire is definitely Owner Bu's ice hard jade urn wine. After the man finished speaking, he removed the cloth cover of the wine jar. Within that instant, a mellow and rich wine aroma drifted into the air and engulfed the store. The aroma of the wine was extraordinarily mellow and concentrated. It completely dispersed the aroma of the Li's fish and captivated everyone in the area. A captivating redness appeared on both the fair faces of Ouyang Zhou and Zhou Yanyu. Just from comparing the aroma, The bejeweled nectar wine had already lost. As for the taste, Zhou Ziyalong and the three barbarians of Ouyang were already eager to savor it. Chapter 42, Why is it you? Zhou Rouge had never smelled such a delicious wine aroma before. In front of this wine aroma, he seemed to have completely forgotten about the taste of the bejeweled nectar wine which he praised as the best. Zhou Ziyalong eagerly tore off the cloth cover of the wine jar and poured the wine into a cup as the pristine liquid created a swaying reflection. The wine aroma penetrated deep into his soul and he was involuntarily intoxicated as he deeply inhaled. Picking up the wine cup, Zhou Ziyalong contentedly lifted it to his nose. As he sniffed the wine, his face was filled with an enjoyable expression. To a wine lover, a cup of fine wine was not inferior to the most beautiful woman in the world. They would let go of all of their vigilance and devote themselves to enjoying the taste of the wine. As the liquid entered his mouth, it felt like ice crystals brushing against his tongue as it flowed down his throat into his stomach. The coolness that it emitted made all the hairs on Zhou Ziyalong's body stand on ends and goosebumps appeared all over. In the split second when the wine entered his stomach, it was like there was a fire burning within his body. The warm feeling instantly gushed to the pit of his stomach, immersing Zhou Ziyalong in the coalesce of ice and fire. Zhou Ziyalong's face was flushing red and had uncontrollably moaned just from a single sip. What a fine wine! It truly is a fine wine! Zhou Ziyalong repeatedly praised. He poured the rest of the wine in the cup into his mouth and his eyes narrowed as if he had entered into a euphoric state. When the three barbarians of Ouyang saw his behavior, they were unable to endure any further. The three of them filled their own wine cups and poured the wine into their mouths as well. Within an instant, their eyes widened in surprise as all of the pores on their bodies relaxedly spread open and they felt a sense of happiness they never experienced before. The three of them did not say anything and concentrated solely on drinking the wine. They were completely immersed in the rich mellowness of the ice-hard jade urn wine. The mysterious man wearing the bamboo hat seemed to be faintly smiling as he watched their reactions. He took off his bamboo hat and revealed a handsome face that seemed to have been sculpted from marble. Filling his cup as well, he was enjoying the wine by himself with an extremely satisfied expression on his face. Is the wine really that good? Zhou Rouge was skeptical. Even though his confidence was wavering under the impact of the rich aroma of the wine, he was still hoping that it was all just a facade when he recalled the outcome of losing the wager. They're definitely pretending. Zhou Rouge was starting to lose confidence. If he had not tasted any of Bu Feng's dishes before, he might still have some confidence. However, after tasting the sweet and sour ribs, he already completely knew that Bu Feng's culinary skills were very strong. Ziyalong, fill a cup for young Master Zhou and fill a cup for me as well, Zhou Yanniu gently said. Zhou Ziyalong was slightly startled as he sobered up from his captivated state, but he was slightly reluctant to obey his sister. There was barely enough wine for himself from the start and he still had to share with that sissy, Zhou Rouge. It was a huge loss for him. The three barbarians of Ouyang were fast drinkers and had already finished the entire jar in a short while. Ouyang was even shaking the jar in his hands to try getting one last drop of wine. Without even a single drop left, the three of them helplessly looked toward Zhou Ziyalong's wine jar. Zhou Ziyalong glared at the three of them and quickly hugged the wine jar in his arms. He first poured a cup for his sister, then poured another for Zhou Rouge and said, "Sissy Zhou, after drinking this cup, you should just obediently admit your loss and hand over the spirit-gathering pill to my sister. Since you've agreed to the wager, you should be willing to pay up." I haven't lost yet." Zhou Rouge's voice was getting weaker. He was in a daze as he looked at the pristine cup of wine. Then he lifted up the cup and sipped from it. Zhou Yanniu lifted up the cup as well and lightly sipped from it while covering the view with her other hand. As the small mouthful of wine entered her stomach, Zhou Yanniu's skin that was fairer than snow instantly became blushing red and a slight redness even appeared on her fair cheeks. Her appearance was extremely adorable. Zhou Rouge already had nothing to say. After tasting the ice-heart jade urn wine and drinking the bejeweled nectar wine again, The latter was as tasteless as plain water. There was too much difference between the two. The Ice Heart Jade Urn wine was the true number one wine within the Light Wind Empire. After finishing the wine in his cup, Joe Rouge had a painful expression on his face. He already understood that he lost the wager. He had no choice but to hand over the 5th grade spirit gathering pill. He was originally planning to use this spirit gathering pill to advance to 4th grade battle spirit. However, he did not expect that he would actually lose it. Without the spirit gathering pill, his breakthrough was far away once more. Receiving the jade bottle that Joe Rouge handed to her, Zhou Yanyu was extremely beautiful as she faintly smiled. There's no need for young Master Zhou to be upset. Even though you've lost a spirit gathering pill, you were able to eat Owner Boo's sweet and sour ribs. It was not a loss for you. It was not a loss? How could that be possible? The sweet and sour ribs could only fulfill his tongue's desires, but the spirit gathering pill was able to help him advance his cultivation level. Comparing the two, it was a huge loss for him. Unless Owner Boo's sweet and sour ribs could help him achieve a breakthrough as well. However, how could that be possible? Joe Rouge was so heartbroken that he had difficulty breathing and had an extremely unsightly expression on his face. Zhou Yanyu only smiled at that. How could a serving of sweet and sour ribs cost 50 crystals just because the taste was good? If the improved egg fried rice could increase true energy within the body, then this sweet and sour ribs would evidently be more effective. Joe Rouge would soon experience that fact. When that moment came, he would understand Owner Boo's true abilities. On the other side, Zhou Zilong had also finished his Ice Heart Jade Urn wine. He was slightly intoxicated and a slight redness had appeared on his face that was as tender as a woman's. The 3 barbarians of Ouyang were still fine. Even though the Ice Heart Jade Urn wine was really mellow, their cultivation levels were high and they were experienced drinkers. Their reactions were not as intense compared to Zhou Zilong's. Bada. The crisp sound of a cup falling onto the table was not loud, but slightly startled everyone. They all looked toward the source of the noise, Zhou Yanyu. Zhou Yanyu's expression, which was still gentle a moment ago, had suddenly turned slightly ferocious and grim. Her gaze was transfixed by the figure at a distance. Zhou Zilong was not that intoxicated in the first place. When he noticed his sister's expression, his tipsiness mostly dispersed. He followed her gaze toward the figure sitting at the table near the entrance. That charming and elegant face that seemed to have been sculpted from marble. "Why is it you?" Zhou Zilong's eyes widened as he practically roared out. Bu Fang, who was resting nearby, was immediately startled as he baffledly looked at Zhou Zilong. He did not seem to understand why the sissy suddenly became so angry. "Why can't it be me?" The hoarse voice that was like sandpaper resounded around the store, containing a trace of coldness. Joe Rouge and the rest saw that handsome face as well and went into a daze. Then their expressions all changed into one filled with incredulity. "You still dare to show up within the capital? Aren't you afraid that father would find out about your location?" "My precious brother," Zhou Yanyu coldly said. Her voice that was like the song of birds contained a trace of killing intent. Zhou Zilong was already at his limit as he stood up and true energy surged out of his body. Heartrending sword monarch Zhou Yu. He actually dared to appear within the imperial city. Is he seeking death? Zhou Rouge and the rest were filled with astonishment. Zhou Yu, the eldest son of Zhou Meng, was astonishingly talented. At the age of 10, he had already become first grade and reached second grade by the time he was 11 years old. He was able to manifest true energy when he was 13 and became battle spirit at the age of 15. He became the youngest 5th grade battle king in the history of the Light Wind Empire at the age of 18. His future was looking bright. However, tragedy struck 3 years ago when Zhou Yu became enthralled with the way of the sword and joined the Void Sword Pavilion. In order to become the master of a sword spirit of Void Sword Pavilion, he even used the blood from his mother's heart as an offering. With a single sword strike to her heart, he sent his mother into a comatose state from which she had yet to awaken. Zhou Yu was then beaten by the furious Zhou Meng to the point where he was vomiting blood and the true energy within his body had dissipated. In the end, he was rescued by the combined efforts of the three elders of Void Sword Pavilion. From then on, Zhou Yu deserted the Zhou family and became an enemy that they swore to kill. Zhou Yanyu and Zhou Zialong could never forget the day when their mother had collapsed in front of them. Her blood splatter had dyed their eyes red and turned into an unforgettable hatred for them, a hatred toward Zhou Yu. From that moment onward, Zhou Yu was not their beloved and esteemed elder brother any longer. Chapter 43, Abrupt Mission. Grr grr grr. Within the silent store, only the sound of liquor being poured into a cup could be heard. Then the distinct sound of someone drinking down the cup of wine in one go and the liquor being swallowed. Zhou Yu lightly breathed out as he finally finished the jar of ice-hard jade-urn wine by himself. He acknowledged the fact that the wine was of the highest quality and was far more delicious than the bejeweled nectar wine. Owner Bu, I am leaving. I will reserve a jar of ice-hard jade-urn wine for tomorrow as well, Zhou Yu said to Bu Feng as he placed 15 crystals onto the table. Then with a gentle smile, he put on his bamboo hat and slung the sword wrapped in a rag behind his back. All right, Bu Feng nodded. Zhou Yu, are you just going to leave like this? Zhou Yanyu's voice rang out. It was no longer like the song of birds, but a slight mixture of anger and killing intent. Zhou Yu's figure, who had already reached the entrance, paused for a moment and turned around. His handsome face was concealed by the black veil of the bamboo hat and could not be seen clearly. What about it? Do you think you can make me stay? There was a hint of mockery in Zhou Yu's hoarse voice. That disdainful tone caused Zhou Yanyu's pupils to slightly constrict as anger covered her beautiful face. Zhou Zialong's temper was even worse than Zhou Yanyu's and he was unable to endure it any further. He gathered his true energy and charged toward Zhou Yu. Ah! You bastard! Zhou Zialong howled with bloodshot eyes as he swung his fist with a powerful force. Bang! Zhou Yu calmly lifted his hand and caught Zhou Zialong's fist with his palm. However, despite Zhou Zialong putting in so much force, Zhou Yu's hand did not budge in the slightest. Third-grade battle maniac? Your talent is still quite inferior compared to your elder sister. Zhou Yu lightly smiled as a powerful force burst out from his palm. The wave of energy scattered in all directions and sent Zhou Zialong's body flying. Zhou Yanyu caught Zhou Zialong's body in midair and her expression had already turned frosty. Zhou Rouge was staring at Zhou Yu while his eyes were flashing. On the other hand, the three barbarians of Ouyang were standing in a distance and shaking their heads while sighing. They could not and dare not interfere in the Zhou family's affairs. After placing Zhou Zialong down, Zhou Yanyu's eyes seemed to become empty as her hair, propelled by a force, began to hover in the air. Ever since that incident 3 years ago, she had been diligently cultivating day after day for this moment. She did it so that she could personally execute the brute that sent their mother into a coma. A pale green dot appeared on her flawless forehead and began to spread as pale green lines gradually covered her beautiful face. Wood mist technique? You actually learned this type of secret technique that depletes your life force. It seems that you really hate me. Zhou Yu's expression underneath the bamboo hat could not be seen as his hoarse voice resounded around the store. Zhou Rouge's pupils constricted as he thought, wood mist technique. That's a terrifying technique that converts life force into a tremendous power. Its users can even challenge higher-level opponents. Zhou Yanyu actually learned such a technique, what a mad woman. Zhou Yu, it's time for you to die. The current Zhou Yanyu was cold and ruthless, and each of her words were as cold as ice. However, just when she was about to make a move, a slender hand suddenly landed on her shoulder and an indifferent voice rang out from behind her. Excuse me, but creating a disturbance is prohibited within the store. If you want to fight, please do it outside. Thank you. Everyone was startled as they looked at Bu Feng, whose hand was still on Zhou Yanyu's shoulder with odd expressions on their faces. This fellow. Was he not afraid of death? With such a grim mood that anyone could detect the murderous intent, it was obvious that a fierce battle was about to occur. What was a third-grade battle maniac doing over there? Zhou Yanniu's dark green pupils slightly moved and her cold gaze focused on Bu Feng's expressionless face. "Are you going to get in my way?" Her voice was as cold as ice mountains and cold winds and would cause any listeners to shiver. Even Bu Feng slightly frowned when he heard her. He stared at the dark green dot on Zhou Yanniu's forehead and could feel a vigorous life force bubbling within. A powerful force knocked away Bu Feng's arm as Zhou Yanniu ignored him and took a step forward. Her toes lightly tapped the ground and her figure swiftly glided toward Zhou Yu. Bu Feng took a step backward and lightly called out, "Whitey." As Whitey appeared next to him with its big belly, Bu Feng patted Whitey's belly and said, "Stop them." Zhou Bei's mechanical eyes flashed, then it disappeared from where it stood and instantly reappeared next to Zhou Yanniu. "Get out of my way." Zhou Yanniu's face suddenly turned ferocious as she flung out a burst of true energy from her hands toward Whitey, who was blocking her way. She had already set her mind on killing Zhou Yu that day, so there was no one who could stop her. Whitey's mechanical eyes slightly flashed red and it lifted up its hand. Bang bang! Ignoring the burst of true energy, Whitey's hand landed on Zhou Yanniu's body, jarring her entire body. Zhou Yanniu was flung backward as she miserably landed next to Zhou Zialong. The dark green dot on her forehead made a crisp sound as it immediately shattered into many pieces like glass. Her secret technique was actually dispelled by a single palm strike from Whitey. Zhou Yu narrowed his eyes as he gravely looked toward Whitey. He thought, "This puppet is slightly interesting. To be able to dispel Zhou Yanniu's technique with a single palm strike, it should be quite strong." "Owner Bu, I am leaving. Don't forget to keep a jar of ice-hard jade urn wine for me," Zhou Yu lightly smiled as he said toward Bu Feng. Then he turned around and disappeared within the chilly alleyway. "Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others." As Zhou Yu disappeared, Whitey's mechanical voice rang out and startled everyone. "Owner Bu, my sister didn't cause trouble. She really didn't. Wasn't she stopped before she could reach the other party?" Zhou Zialong's expression slightly changed as he quickly hugged Zhou Yanniu's body and anxiously said to Bu Feng, "What a joke. How could Zhou Zialong allow others to strip his sister and throw her out? It would not just simply end with a clamor, an earthquake might even occur within the imperial city." Bu Feng slightly hesitated as he felt that Zhou Zialong's words seemed to hold water. The other party's secret technique being dispelled has led to a severe loss of life force and resulted in a life-endangering situation. Considering that Whitey injured Zhou Yanniu due to the host's incitement, an abrupt mission shall be issued. Abrupt mission: the host has to learn elixir cuisine, the cooking method of sage herb phoenix chicken soup, within 3 days and rescue the life of a dying beauty. Since ancient times, the fate of beautiful women end in misery. Young man, use your nimble hands to rescue her. Mission reward: oyster bun that may be ordered to take out. The system's solemn voice suddenly rang out in Bu Feng's mind, causing him to space out. Abrupt mission? Rescue the beauty? The rule was set by the system. Bu Feng was slightly dumbfounded as the corner of his mouth twitched. After analysis, it is concluded that Zhou Yanniu's actions was not severe enough to be considered as causing trouble, the system seriously replied. Bu Feng felt as if his chest was pierced by an invisible arrow. Fine, this style of conducting business is indeed how the system behaves. Owner Bu. My sister. She. What's wrong with her? Zhou Zialong's horrified voice pulled Bu Feng back into reality. Bu Feng walked toward Zhou Yanniu. Her face was pale and her rosy lips had lost its luster. It was as if her life energy was rapidly depleting. The system was indeed not lying to him. She was in a life-endangering situation after receiving the blow from Whitey. It's alright. She's only suffering from an ordinary loss of life force. There's always a few days in a month when people experience this. Bring her back here in 3 days and I'll prepare a medicinal cuisine for her. She'll recover once she eats it, Bu Fang simply said as he expressionlessly concealed his guilty conscience. Zhou Zilong and the rest were stunned. They thought, is it really alright? There isn't even any color on her face. Trust me, it's alright. However, remember to bring her back in 3 days, Bu Fang earnestly exhorted. Young Master Zhou, you should bring young Lady Yanyu back to the manor and let General Zhou look at her first. With the general's abilities, he should be able to treat her, the 3 barbarians of Ouyang reminded Zhou Zilong. Zhou Zilong was immediately woken up by the reminder and hastily exited the store with Zhou Yanyu in his arms. Zhou Rouge and the rest left as well. The incident that day had quite a huge impact on them. The fact that the heartrending sword monarch had appeared within the imperial city was an important information. After all, such a dangerous character had appeared in a sensitive period. Smelly boss, is elder sister Yanyu really alright? Ouyang Zioyi doubtfully looked up at Bu Fang and asked. She's alright. Be a good girl and go back first, Bu Fang said as he stroked Ouyang Zioyi's head. Once everyone had left, Bu Fang closed up the store and ended the business for the day. System, what will happen if I don't manage to learn how to cook the sage herb phoenix chicken soup within 3 days? Bu Fang quietly asked the system. The system solemnly replied, there's a 99% chance that the host would be torn into pieces by the furious 7th grade battle Saint Zhou Meng. System, for the sake of rescuing a beauty still experiencing the prime of her life, I will work hard. Hurry up and tell me how to cook the medicinal cuisine. Hurry! Bu Fang announced in a righteous tone. Chapter 44, Heavenly Sage Herb and Blood Phoenix Chicken. As the night fell, the 2 crescent moons towering above called out to each other and radiated ice-cold moonlight like a mysterious veil across the world. Imperial City, Great Hall of the Zhou Manor. Father, is elder sister alright? Zhou Zilong was filled with anxiety and his face was full of dread. He was afraid that his father would say the words he feared the most. Zhou Yanyu's beautiful face was extremely pale and her lively eyes had become spiritless. Underneath her pasty skin, there was a black vein roaming about as her life force continued to deplete. The burly Zhou Meng was gloomily standing next to Zhou Yanyu. As he slowly withdrew the true energy used to examine her, his dashing eyebrows were knitted together and were almost touching. A trace of killing intent, deeply hidden in his eyes, was starting to stir. Who did this? How did Yanyu become like this? Zhou Meng coldly asked, suppressing his anger as he spoke. We went to Fang Fang's little store and met elder brother. Zhou Zilong was slightly trembling and had some difficulty breathing due to Zhou Meng's intimidation. A 7th grade battle saint's fury was not something that an ordinary person could endure. Zhou Meng turned his head and attentively looked toward him. Who did you say you met? Zhou Yu? Yes. So, he's the one who injured Yanyu? Zhou Meng gritted his teeth and coldly asked. His fists were tightly clenched together as he suppressed his boundless fury. Zhou Zilong was startled and he quickly denied it. Subsequently, he conveyed everything that happened within the store to Zhou Meng. You're saying that Yanyu was injured by the store's puppet? There was no expression on Zhou Meng's face, but Zhou Zilong was even more frightened now. He knew that the type of anger that was not shown was the most terrifying. The owner said. He can save elder sister 3 days from now, Zhou Zilong said. And you actually believed him? You're letting someone of unknown background dictate your elder sister's life. Zhou Meng coldly smiled as he glanced at Zhou Zilong, causing him to feel as if he was plunged into icy waters. Go back first. I've already invited the imperial physicians over. Hopefully, they'll be able to save your elder sister. Zhou Meng tiredly beckoned the dejected Zhou Zilong to leave. After Zilong left, Zhou Meng ordered the servants to bring Zhou Yanyu back to her room and he disappeared from the spot after taking a step. I'd like to see what kind of person would dare to injure my daughter, Zhou Meng's gloomy voice resounded. Under the night sky, Fang Fang's little store seemed a little tranquil. The alleyway was deep and quiet, and light was seeping out from the gaps between the tightly shut door boards. The big black dog was lazily lying at the entrance with its eyes closed, maintaining its immutable sleeping position as if sleep was the dog's greatest hobby. The eyes of the big black dog that were shut tight suddenly quivered, then slightly opened and puzzledly looked toward an empty space. It saw a figure striding in the air and approaching Fang Fang's little store with a solemn expression. The aura coming from the figure was stifling and terrifying. Zhou Meng was standing proudly in the air with his hands behind his back as he looked down upon the store. His eyes suddenly focused onto the body of the big black dog lying at the entrance. "A big black dog?" Zhou Meng slightly muttered. His expression gradually changed from being unconcerned to a grave look as he intently stared at the dog. It was an unfathomable dog. Zhou Meng was bewildered. He was unable to see through the dog. Even though the other party was only lazily lying there, Zhou Meng felt that if he tried to destroy the store, the dog would definitely give him a devastating retaliation. A mysterious store and a mysterious dog. It really isn't simple. Zhou Meng was unnerved. He was suddenly slightly convinced by what Zhou Xiaolong had said. Perhaps the owner would really be able to save his daughter 3 days later. "If you can't save my daughter in 3 days, then, even if I have to risk my old life, I will make sure this store is buried with my daughter," Zhou Meng coldly snorted to himself. Then his figure instantly flew across the sky and disappeared. The big black dog indifferently glanced at the direction where Zhou Meng disappeared. It opened its mouth and yawned. Then it snorted and continued with its sleep. Bu Fang, who was within the store, did not realize what just happened outside the store at all. At the moment, he was fully focused on learning the elixir cuisine, the cooking method of the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. Elixir cuisine, elixirs with medicinal value are blended together with ingredients, which are rich in spirit energy, that also fulfill the requirements of being used in medicines. Special cooking techniques are used to process the elixir and ingredients to produce a medicinal cuisine that possesses color, smell, taste and healing capabilities, the system explained. Sage herb phoenix chicken soup. It is a soup cooked using the 5th grade spirit herb heavenly sage herb from the wildlands, the 5th grade spirit beast blood phoenix chicken and numerous spirit herbs based on a strict proportion. This soup possesses life force recovery as well as blood and energy replenishment capabilities. The medicinal value is extremely high, but there is a strict requirement regarding the proportion allocation of the spirit herbs. Bu Fang finished reading the cooking method of the sage herb phoenix chicken soup. He was not familiar with medicinal cuisines as he did not possess much knowledge about them. Even though he understood the rationale behind the strict proportion, putting it into practice was not so simple. "I should just immediately start practicing." Bu Fang frowned and decided to attempt the cooking method of the medicinal cuisine. The system will prepare 3 servings of ingredients for the host. The host will only have 3 tries to complete the dish. The system's solemn voice rang out once more, startling Bu Fang. With only 3 servings of ingredients, he could only fail twice. He earnestly studied the recipe of the elixir cuisine once more. As he took a deep breath, his eyes were brimming with confidence. Without Bu Fang knowing, a gigantic cupboard had appeared within the kitchen. It was placed separately on one side and the 3 servings of ingredients mentioned by the system were inside. As Bu Fang opened the door of the cupboard, a dense amount of spirit energy immediately gushed out, causing all of the pores on his body to slightly open. Goo. At the bottom layer of the cupboard, 3 chicken cages were installed. Each of the cages had a beautiful chicken that had feathers as red as blood. Bu Fang expressionlessly thought, "So, the chickens are alive. I thought the system had already processed them." The system has already sealed off the cultivation level of the blood phoenix chicken. The host only needs to follow the normal procedure of handling the chicken. Reminder: the body of the chicken must be completely preserved. The comb of the blood phoenix chicken must not be damaged. Bu Fang skillfully grabbed one of the blood phoenix chicken from the chicken cages while it desperately flapped its wings and loudly clucked. A blood phoenix chicken with its cultivation level sealed was no different from a free-range chicken on Earth. Of course, the appearance was an exception. The blood phoenix chicken was extremely good-looking. It had a streamlined body and its comb was both large and red, as if it was filled with blood. Its feathers were vermilion red and remarkably eye-catching, while its beak was dark red. From afar, it looked like a burning flame. The 5th grade spirit beast blood phoenix chicken was actually not that strong when it came to fighting. At the very least, it was quite weak compared to other 5th grade spirit beasts. However, its movement speed was very fast, which was why it was rated 5th grade. Of course, within Fang Fang's little store the blood phoenix chicken was no different from any ordinary chicken. It could not even struggle while a 3rd grade battle maniac with no combat ability like Bu Fang easily slaughtered it. Bu Fang skillfully processed the blood phoenix chicken and had almost perfectly handled it. Then he proceeded to take out all sorts of valuable herbs from the cupboard. These spirit herbs were full of spirit energy and the amount leaking out had completely enveloped the kitchen, making it seem like a paradise. The spirit energy seeping out of the heavenly sage herb was especially dense and was almost forming clouds. Following the instructions in the recipe, Bu Fang first created a hole on the sage herb and poured the aromatic juice into a bowl. The bowl was half filled when he was done. Then, he used an exquisite knife technique to slice the sage herb. Bu Fang stuffed spirit herbs into the stomach of the blood phoenix chicken while following the proportions in the recipe. Then he took out a clay pot and placed the entire blood phoenix chicken into it. He filled the clay pot with water from a spirit spring and started to simmer it. After half an hour, he opened the lid and poured in the sage herb juice and let it continue to simmer. This time, he let the pot continue to simmer for another 2 hours. The fragrance of the chicken meat was accompanied by the aromatic smell of the sage herb as it slowly seeped out from the clay pot. It was like mist as it floated within the kitchen without dissipating. Did I succeed? Bu Fang was slightly surprised. However, in the next moment, the system's solemn voice rang out in his mind. The host's first attempt has failed. Chapter 45, Joe Meng has come to the store. The host's first attempt has failed. The system's voice rang out in Bu Fang's mind, startling him. How could he have failed? The fragrance was so strong. As Bu Fang lifted up the clay pot from the stove and uncovered a lid, a thick amount of steam mixed with the fragrance of chicken gushed out. The sweet scent of sage herb was mixed within the fragrance as well. Bu Fang was slightly intoxicated as he greedily inhaled. Within the clay pot, the blood-red chicken meat was slightly quivering like jelly and the chicken soup was still bubbling. Every time a bubble burst, a rich fragrance would flow out. The purple juice of the sage herb had turned into a lime color after simmering for a while. There was a layer of yellow foam floating above the soup. It was the crystallization of the spirit herb's essence. Bu Fang was frowning as he stared at the color of the chicken soup. After a long while, he gave a long sigh and a touch of regret appeared on his face. There was no mistake. Bu Fang had indeed failed. If he had successfully completed the sage herb blood phoenix soup, the soup would not be lime in color. In order for the chicken soup to achieve a perfect efficacy, the juice of the sage herb had to completely permeate into the meat, and then the color of the soup would be amber. System suggestion: during the process of cooking the elixir cuisine, the host can expedite the process of the permeation of the sage herb juice into the meat of the chicken by using true energy. This will preserve the efficacy of the spirit herbs and improve the texture of the meat, the system said. Use true energy to expedite the process? Bu Fang's eyes slightly lit up. There were basically no mistakes in his cooking steps, but he still failed in the end. He reviewed what he did and pondered for a while, but still did not figure out where he was wrong and only realized his mistake after the system's reminder. He was cooking an elixir cuisine and the ingredients and spirit herbs used were extremely abundant. In order to perfectly neutralize the spirit energy of the ingredients and spirit herbs, he could not just rely on kitchen tools to cook the dish. He also needed to use true energy as a medium to complete this elixir cuisine. The truth was that it was not just the elixir cuisine. In the future, Bu Feng would also need to use true energy as a medium when cooking other dishes. It was also one of the reasons why the system would help Bu Feng to convert crystals into true energy. Many high-grade ingredients contained a tremendous amount of spirit energy, and it was not possible to rely on kitchen tools to handle them. In the event he made a mistake, it would easily result in an explosion or various other problems. Bu Feng would need to consider these issues once he started to use ingredients that exceeded 5th grade. Bu Feng deeply inhaled, then beckoned for Whitey and placed the failed product of the sage herb phoenix chicken soup into Whitey's stomach to be recycled. He stretched his body and yawned. It was time for him to sleep. As a young man aiming to become the god of cooking, Bu Feng must regulate work and rest. When it was time to sleep, he would definitely not be doing other things. Even though Bu Feng failed his first attempt at cooking the sage herb phoenix chicken soup, he was still enigmatically calm and collected as usual. After patting Whitey's wide belly, Bu Feng went back to his room and peacefully slept. The next morning, he woke up and after washing up, he started that day's business. He practiced the meteor cutting technique as usual and completed that day's mission. Then he used the radishes from the practice to cook a radish egg fried rice. After Bu Feng tasted it and was satisfied with the taste, he expressionlessly left it for Blackie, who was sleeping at the entrance. The store was starting to get popular as well. At the very least, when he opened up for business every morning, he would see a loyal army of obese men outside. Fatty Jin and his buddies came every day regardless of rain or shine. "Owner Bu, I'll have a serving of golden shume." "Oh my, the sweet and sour ribs actually costs 50 crystals. Since it's expensive enough, I'll have a serving as well." Fatty Jin laughed and said as the fat on his face jiggled. The other obese men also ordered their dishes, and so, Bu Feng started his busy work. Ouyang Xiaoyi quickly arrived as well. After working for a few days, she was slightly more experienced and was more proficient at her job. During business hours, Bu Feng was working as usual. He did not have the time to think about the cooking method of the sage herb phoenix chicken soup and seemed to be very calm. Xushi unhurriedly walked into the store. Ever since the Crown Prince ordered him to investigate the place, he was completely taken captive by the delicious food and came almost every day. "Girl, I'll have a serving of boiled fish." Xushi slightly nodded toward Ouyang Xiaoyi. Boiled fish was Xushi's favorite dish. He liked it more than Li's fish and fish head tofu soup. The feeling of pleasure as each slice of smooth and tender fish entered his mouth was simply intoxicating for him. After receiving the order, Bu Feng nodded and walked toward the fish tank. His hands swiftly entered the water and grabbed a black fish out of the tank. The fish was a type of freshwater fish and was a grade lower than the thunder silver carp. However, the texture of its flesh was more tender than the one from the thunder silver carp. When Bu Feng placed the struggling fish on the cutting board, the fish even spat out a stream of water at him, creating a patch of wetness on his clothes. Bu Feng was expressionless as he smacked the fish's head with the kitchen knife. Then he skillfully descaled and gutted the fish. Finally, the fish was sliced into pieces. His cutting technique was even more superb after a few days of training, and his speed when slicing the fish was extremely fast. Once the fish was sliced, the other steps were much easier. After the spirit vegetables were handled, they were placed into a single pot to boil. When the fragrance drifted out, he threw in the slices of fish that were just slightly heated up with ginger water to remove the fishy smell. After boiling for a while, the dish was plated. The fragrant and glossy boiled fish was placed in front of Xushi, causing his eyes to suddenly lit up and reveal an eager expression on his face. Perhaps even the Crown Prince was unaware that his #1 advisor was actually a foodie. Dada. A middle-aged man, with a handsome face that seemed to have been sculpted from marble, stepped into the store with his hands behind his back. His gaze was steady and cold, while his aura was tense. The rich fragrance that filled the interior of the store caused a slight amazement to appear on the middle-aged man's face. When the middle-aged man saw Ouyang Xiaoyi, he was startled once more and puzzledly asked, "Xiaoyi, what are you doing here?" As his voice rang out within the store, Xushi, who was just about to put a slice of boiled fish into his mouth, suddenly trembled and the slice of fish fell into the bowl once more. The result was some of the sauce from the bowl splattered onto his beautiful beard. Great General Zhou Meng. When Xushi turned his head saw who it was, he immediately stood up from his seat and greeted while performing a fist and palm salute. At the same time, he thought, my heavens! The great General Zhou Meng actually appeared in this little restaurant as well? This is an important information. I must inform the Crown Prince. Zhou Meng nodded. He naturally recognized the Crown Prince's #1 advisor. He appreciated the ability of Xushi to plan strategies and schemes as well and recognized him as a talent. Uncle Zhou, why are you here as well? Ouyang was still afraid of Zhou Meng. After all, the #1 expert within the imperial city was very prestigious. Since I am at a restaurant, I am naturally here to eat, Zhou Meng simply replied and turned to look at the menu. The astronomical values on the menu did not surprise him and his expression did not change in the slightest. As expected of a 7th grade battle saint, his temperament was steady. Xushi secretly nodded and gave a thumbs up to Zhou Meng in his mind. Sweet and sour ribs, improved egg fried rice, Lee's fish, golden shumei, as well as a jar of ice-hard jade-urn wine. Zhou Meng calmly read out the name of the dishes, while standing with his hands behind his back. After memorizing the order, Ouyang Ziyi went toward the kitchen and relayed the dishes to Bufang. Bufang was slightly surprised as he thought, it looks like a big spender came, these many dishes would cost a lot of crystals. After expressionlessly nodding, Bufang began to cook. After Xushi quickly finished the boiled fish, he bid farewell to Zhou Meng and swiftly left. He was in a hurry to inform the Crown Prince about the news. Since the great General Zhou was visiting the restaurant, it was a good chance for the Crown Prince to win him over. Not long after Xushi left, Ouyang Ziyi timidly served each of the dishes that Zhou Meng had ordered. Every single dish exuded a rich fragrance. Even someone as calm as Zhou Meng could not help but be surprised, as he discovered that the taste of the dishes were far more delicious than he had expected. They were far better than the dishes of the #1 restaurant in the Imperial City, the Immortal Phoenix Restaurant. The last order, the ice-hard jade-urn wine, was personally served by Bufang. As he walked out of the kitchen, he was quickly noticed by Zhou Meng. Zhou Meng put down his chopsticks, looked at Bufang with a fake smile and said, "You're the owner? The owner who injured my daughter and claimed to be able to save her as well?"